Hello, anyone out there who's watching. My name's Shane Thomas. I'm the high school quiz bowl coach at Cedar Crest High School in beautiful Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And this is the first in a series of 3 short videos that I'm calling Quiz Bowl 101, an introduction to Quiz Bowl and how to become a better player. So, if you're watching this video, chances are you know at least enough about Quiz Bowl to know that it's a game that's predominantly built around us answering questions. A toss-up question, and then once you've answered a toss-up question, you have the opportunity to answer bonus questions. Most Quiz Bowl games are, at least in their essence, some sort of format related to that, where the whole idea is that you're answering questions about something. Depending on what game you're playing, that might vary. But here we're going to introduce you to the basic premises of playing what we refer to as good pyramidal quiz bowl, and the games related to that. So this first video is going to be focused on helping you to decide what type of player you should be. So, philosophically, I've always said that on some level, everybody should be a generalist. Okay, so if you're new to this game, you're probably asking, what's a generalist? Well, a generalist is somebody who knows things about everything. Okay, so if I'm a generalist, I should know things about literature, I should know things about artworks, I should know things about history, I should know things about all of the various sciences and things like that. That's what a generalist is. So I always say everybody should be a generalist on some level. There should be some base level of knowledge that you should have. You know, you should know that Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, and you should know that the positively charged particle in the nucleus of an atom is the proton. And, you know, there are so many different things that, you know, should serve as the base knowledge that everyone has. So I say on some level everyone should be a generalist, but it's very hard to be a good generalist. There is so much information in each of these respective categories that in order to be a good generalist who can cover every single category within the distribution, it's very difficult to know all of that information. It's really just kind of too much for any one player to know all of the things that are in the distribution in all of the categories. Instead, what you want to do is you want to try to become what we refer to as a concentrated generalist, okay, where you have a certain bit of surface knowledge, maybe even deeper than surface knowledge in all categories, but that you have specializations where those are your bread and butter, the things that you are going to know about. You know, if anyone on the team is going to know about this category, it's going to be you. So the first thing you should do as a player when you're, you know, philosophically what we're going at here, the first thing you should try and do is decide where your concentrations are going to be. You want to pick 1 or 2 of the major categories, 1 or 2 of the minor categories, and any subcategories that you think you might be interested in, because obviously if it's stuff you're interested in, you're more likely to learn more about it and learn it in more depth. And so, you know, this is kind of the building blocks for how you're going to build yourself as a player. You can be a successful player by being, you know, absolutely locked down on 1 or 2 minor categories, as long as you have teammates who cover the major categories. So really, you want to find your niche and get to be as good and as deep of a player in that niche as you possibly can. So let's talk about what the major and minor categories are when we talk about those. So first off, let's talk about the major categories, what we refer to as the big 3. Literature, science/math, and history. Now, these numbers that you see next to them, these are from a standard introductory set distribution for NAQT. When they run a set, basically they make 12 packets with 24 questions each, total of 288 questions in a set. These numbers in parentheses are the number of, on average, toss-ups and then bonuses that you will see in these categories on average in one set of 24 questions. So if you look at a packet of 24 questions, you expect to see 4.1 toss-ups and 4.1 bonuses on average in literature. 5.6 toss-ups and 5.4 bonuses on average in science and math, and 4.8 toss-ups and 4.5 bonuses on average in history. Okay? Now this is, like I said, these numbers I'm giving you are for the IS distribution. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on in this video, but those are the big three. If you total all those up, that's about 14.5 questions, toss-up questions on average out of 24 questions in a packet that fall into those three categories. That's why there are major categories. And then there are our minor categories, which we'll look at next. And you can see the breakdown of numbers for those, but the minor categories: fine arts, geography, mythology, trash, which encompasses pop culture and sports, social science, theology and philosophy, current events, and miscellaneous. And you can see the breakdown. You can also see my inconsistencies where I used commas and sometimes and slashes some other times. Oops. But you can see the weighting on those different categories. So, suppose I as a player decide I'm going to become really good at literature and fine arts and current events. If I become the best player that I can be at all of those, on average, I've got 7.5 out of the 24 toss-ups in a given round that should be mine if I can be the best player in the room in all of those categories. Okay? For a more detailed breakdown of the distribution, we're going to look at this right now. Like I said, this is the distribution for high school IS, what we call a high school IS set. And when we look at this, you can see that this breaks down into subcategories. There's that 4.1 number for literature that we talked about earlier in the slide. And you can see that it breaks down even further into subcategories. For instance, English literature, we expect to see about 2.5 toss-ups per 24 question packet in the category of English literature, which further breaks down into American and British, each of which averages about half of that. So in general, in every 4 packets that you see, you should see 10 questions on English literature, 5 of them that are American and 5 of them that are British. So that's how these distributions work. And there's a different distribution for every level. You can go ahead, if you're, a brand new high school player, the distribution that you'll most be interested in is what they call the high school A-set distribution. And you can just Google NAQT A-set distribution, and you should be able to find a link that brings you to a page that looks like this. If you're a middle school player, should be able to Google NAQT middle school distribution. It should bring you to a page that looks just like this. If you're a more advanced player, or as you become a more advanced player, maybe you want the NAQT Nationals distribution, and you can go ahead and Google that. And while they're very similar, there are some slight differences. Each distribution might have, I know the middle school distribution has a little bit less literature and maybe a little bit more of some of the other categories in comparison to this regular high school distribution. There are also sometimes house-written tournaments that have their own distributions. If you're somebody who's playing a house-right tournament, you can always find distributions for the house rights, usually on highschoolquizbowl.org. A quick little pitch for that site. I'll mention it again in one of my other videos. Okay, so there's what the distribution looks like. So you want to pick your categories. So where do you go from here? The first thing you should do when you're a player, pick your categories, strive to be the best player at your categories. So if you're going to become a literature and fine arts player, be the best literature and fine arts player that you can be. What you'd like to do next after this is, I'm going to make 2 more videos here, video 2 and video 3, for tips and techniques for you to help you become the best player that you can be. Once you've picked your categories, we'll talk about techniques that you can use to get better at those categories. Also, consult with your coach and work with other players on your team to make sure that you have all the categories covered. It says here, in order for a team to be successful at a high level, the 4 players need to combine to be strong at all of these categories. So one of the things you want to do is consult with your coach, consult with your teammates, and find out, hey, player A is going to make sure that they're really strong at these subcategories of science, and player B is going to make sure that they're strong at these subcategories. And ideally, you would have 4 players where every single subcategory that appears in the distribution, someone is very strong at that subcategory. So that's our goal, and we're going to talk in the next 2 videos about how we're going to try to reach that goal. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time in video 2.